All right, welcome everyone. It's the Velero community meeting on June 4th. Hope everyone's having a good week so far. We have an agenda today to talk a little bit about what we've been working on and kind of how we're going to be spending our time over the next few weeks. Before we jump into that, I definitely wanted to start by welcoming the newest member of our team, Adnan. He's joining us at VMware. Excuse me. He recently joined VMware through the Bitnami acquisition. I saw Adnan just joined, so do you want to say hi and just give a brief introduction?
Yeah, sure. Hey, everyone. As Steve said, I joined recently through the Bitnami acquisition and now on the Velero team. Excited to still kind of onboarding and stuff right now, but hopefully be able to get stuck in soon.
Yeah, so we're super excited to have him and super excited to have the team grow a little bit more so we can tackle some more work. So welcome.
Thanks, Steve.
Sure. All right, so we'll jump into the agenda now. So I think the first thing we wanted to cover is just to talk a little bit about what we've been working on over the last week or two since we announced v1.0. And so we've, obviously took a little bit of time to recover from the big release and just kind of get ourselves reorganized. But we've started to think a lot about 1.1 planning. Think about what features and what work we want to tackle in that release, and we're also trying to think a little bit longer range and think over the next several releases, what is the set of work we want to get into. But we've done some work with kind of scoping the 1.1 release, and so we definitely wanted to share that and get any feedback that folks have on the set of work that we're planning on working on. So what we have here in the agenda is kind of the three major items that we have currently scheduled for 1.1. And so we'll spend a few minutes on each of these, just talking through kind of how we're thinking about these things. So for the first one, I'll hand it over to Nolan, and he can talk through the CSI Snapshot API integration.
Yeah, thanks. So for those of you that aren't familiar with it, the CSI is a container storage interface that is meant to be a more generic way for container orchestrators to interface with their storage. It went to GA in Kubernetes 1.13, I think, or 1.14.
Yeah.
And the snapshot capability for this is currently in alpha as of Kubernetes 1.14. We're going to try to support this via Velero plugins to start out with. So we want to be able to support more providers, and hopefully that this will give us the ability to kind of get more provider support for free, supposedly as long as they're using CSI. Right now, we're kind of testing the waters, making sure we're compatible. And this is not going to be GA for 1.1. We're going to track the CSI snapshotting feature state as closely as we can. So when they're alpha, we'll be alpha. When they're beta, we'll try to be beta. And when they're GA, we'll try to be GA. We currently have some prototype plugins up at the URLs. And I started a design document in that repo as well. So feel free to come into that repo if you've got issues or questions. I know some people on this call were already interested in talking about this. And this is something that VMware is very interested in implementing as well. So.
Reiterate given that that Snapshot API is in alpha and highly likely to change over the next few releases. But we think we can get a pretty decent set of working functionality using this plugin based approach for the prototype, and it will both give us as a team the chance to get pretty intimately familiar with that API, and also will give early users who are interested in trying it out something that's actually functional that they can use to start testing out and giving us feedback on. And then I think we'll still need to figure out longer term what the kind of GA integration looks like. We're not quite there yet. We don't know whether it will remain as plugins or whether it'll be a deeper integration into the core code base. But we're hoping to use the prototype to kind of help us answer some of those questions.
Cool.
Does anybody have any questions or comments on that section so far?
Yeah. I'm sorry, I think I'm mute. So Nolan, one quick question. So was there a specific reason? I just looked actually at the plugin that you used, like the item backup and item restore instead of just the volume snapshot or plugin.
So instead of writing volume snapshot or plugins that are kind of analogous to our current volume providers, is that
yeah
is that what you're asking? Well, the reason we're going there is because we want to process on the PVCs.
Right.
The volume providers, we probably could, but I think it's probably easier with the PVC item action plugins because the way CSI is implemented, we need to read things off of the PVC and write them to the PVC.
Okay.
That said, I wouldn't be opposed to doing another implementation as a spike to see where we go. But right now that appears to be working, but these are all like very happy path, not a whole lot of error handling prototypes.
Right. Right, because I took that approach actually and ran some issues. And I think, as you said, because of the PVC type, mainly, with the storage class, especially during restore, and because of the PVC, and it's not passed down. So we had to, the plugin doesn't pass it down. So we had to figure out. So yeah, we can catch up off that, as well. Some offline.
Okay, cool. So yeah, if you've already tried it with the volume provider approach, I'd be curious to hear your feedback on that.
Yeah, definitely. And I will try the plugin you have. Actually, I'll deploy it on mine, and I'll give you feedback on that as well.
Great, appreciate that.
Sure.
Yeah, definitely. One of the things we've noticed so far is that just getting environments set up that have CSI installed, that have the Snapshot APIs all enabled is definitely a non-trivial effort. And so for any folks out there who have those environments set up, we would hugely appreciate them trying out the plugins and giving us feedback, because it is a little bit expensive to get those set up. So
yeah, and I would also say feedback for the cloud providers. Getting them set up, because as they move out of tree, the migration from the in-tree cloud provider plugins to getting CSI set up may be a little bumpy. So we definitely want to work with cloud providers to make that transition smoother. Excuse me, but as of today, it's very kind of intensive and confusing.
Can I ask you what the workflow is for driving a backup from one of these CSI snapshots? What I have in mind is when you create one of these snapshots, you can take the snapshot and create another second PVC from it. Conceivably, you could mount that somewhere and back up from that secondary entity. Is that what the plan is here in the workflow of doing a backup, or is it something else?
Currently, the plan is as we process so on the backup side, as we're backing up and see PVCs, we issue a volume snapshot, which is the CSI custom resource. We create one of those and have that get run through the CSI driver. And then we consider that snapshot as kind of our backup, and that's what we'll restore from. So we're not creating the snapshot and then mounting that and then backing that up somewhere else. So this is pretty analogous to how we're doing snapshots with the current providers. But that is something that's been mentioned before, that maybe we take a snapshot, mount that, and back that up with something so that you get a more quiesced and consistent backup. But that's not something we're looking at with this right now.
Well, so you create the snapshot and you attempt to read the snapshot directly through some kind of Velero specific volume interface. Is that what I understand this is?
No, it's pretty much just creating the snapshot from the CSI. We're issuing the volume snapshot, and we rely on the CSI driver to create that.
Okay.
After that,
and then what's the step after that? What do you do with that snapshot once you create it?
Right now, we don't do a whole lot with it.
So you don't read it?
No.
So you declare the snapshot is a backup?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Yes.
So yeah, this is Valero's current assumption. So Velero was developed primarily with the public cloud providers in mind, is that when you take a snapshot, that the underlying storage platform, the public cloud provider, is replicating that data off somewhere so that the snapshot is durable and can be restored from later. We haven't changed that assumption in Velero, and so that's true whether you're using a current volume snapshot or for the new CSI integration we're looking at.
Yeah. You're right that it's durable. However, my experience in the backup market is that it's also super expensive, so that people would have an expectation that, if you've got requirements to keep backups for years, building up an inventory of years of daily snapshots is really ugly.
Yeah, and that's something, so far we would prefer the driver take care of that, but we may have to address that soon. But you're right, like on certain snapshot engines, that gets really expensive, even if you're not doing years.
It's not just expensive, but on certain backing stores, it degrades performance because they do copy on write mechanisms, and that degradation can be horrible. Right. And on many of them, there are limits to the numbers that can be outstanding. Something on the order of 20-ish is not uncommon.
Right. Yep.
Yeah, Steve, we've had some discussions with storage providers as well, that, after the backup is completed, we haven't decided exactly how it would work, but basically hand off a set of snapshot IDs or otherwise trigger or indicate to the storage provider that these snapshots are ready for archive. And then that would trigger those systems to initiate whatever their archival options are that allow them to take those to offline storage.
I got a suggestion here, because obviously your programmer resource challenge, shall we say, to do everything that's on the wish list. There are a lot of backup vendors that would have a commercial interest potentially in this if they were aware of an opportunity. So it might be worth reaching out to some of these people to see if they might be interested in committing developers to this effort to build something like that. The steps here, I think, would be that you'd create the snapshot, and if you did it through a Kubernetes mount to copy it to S3 storage or something cheaper, the advantage of just doing a standard Kubernetes mount is it isn't storage specific at all, right? I mean, the design of the CSI snapshot is that you just create a second shadow PVC off of that and mount it to a pod. And there's nothing at all storage specific there. That the thing abstracted that out from you, which would be great. And you could have one implementation then that moves this data to cheap archival storage, and it should work for everything. If you can find somebody with a business interest in selling this cheap archival storage, they might commit resources to doing this work. Anyway, just throwing that out there as an idea.
Yeah, that's a good idea, Stephen. And
Tom, if you want to reach out to me after the call, I might suggest some contacts for that too.
Okay, that's great. I'll give you a call after this.
Yeah, thanks for that.
Great. Are there any other comments or questions on the CSI snapshot work? All right, well, we can move on to the next item. So the next major kind of bucket that we want to tackle in 1.1 is making some improvements to the Rustic integration. So when we released 1.0, we decided that the Rustic integration would remain in the beta state. So we weren't quite ready to call it generally available. And so we do want to do some work in the upcoming releases to move that to GA. And so I'll let Carlicia take over and talk through some of the things we've been thinking about there as far as what improvements we need to make.
Steve, can you please open that HackMD link? I listed things separately because it's quite a big list. What I did here is listed every single issue that we have open that's related to Rustic, and I grouped them by stability, usability, security, and performance. That is one little issue related to documentation. And I'm not quite sure if I should go over every single one right now. I'd like feedback on that. Or if I should just say, if anyone on the call right now sees anything that is of concern or priority for you, then we can dig deeper. I will go over a little bit of the gist of each category, but just saying, if you see something in particular, keep in mind so we can talk about that. And for people watching the video later, definitely ping us, because we are actively trimming this list to what we're going to work on for 1.1. And if you have needs for anything in particular, you should let us know. So we already know we are prioritizing stability, because that is a major point for the Rustic integration to be considered GA for us. And just, let me see. Yeah, it's all over the place. Little, medium, big things that need to be done for the way that Rustic works to be consistent and to work in an expected way. Usability, there is nothing really super pressing. It's mostly minor issues with the user experience. Security, we have a couple big issues here that will require thinking at a bigger scope, because if we change the way we are handling, for example, encryption for Rustic, it might make sense for us to think about how we handle encryption for our backups at rest, for the whole Velero system. And performance, these issues have to do with the way Velero, well, a couple lock-related issues, the top two that we can work on, and other issues have to do with the way Velero does backup in a synchronous way. And I think that's all I have to say. So again, I'd love to hear questions, or I can go deeper in any specific issue if anyone on the call right now would like me to do that.
Yeah, I'll just jump in and say, we've basically, like Carlicia has said, we've kind of looked at all of the issues that have been filed in our GitHub repo that have been labeled as restic issues, and we've collected feedback through Slack conversations and other outlets, and so we're trying to just bring that whole list together and then make sure that we tackle the things that are really must-haves before we consider this integration GA. And I think we probably have more than one release's worth of work here to get to a GA state. So we'll be tackling as much as we can and trying to focus on the highest priority items for 1.1. But odds are that this will continue into 1.2. But we'll sort of see where we are when we get to the release date for 1.1.
Any questions, anyone? Any desire to prioritize anything? Can always let us know later too.
Yeah, definitely continue to reach out on Slack or comment on any of these issues. Carlicia's got most of these marked with the corresponding GitHub issues, so feel free to just add comments in whatever way is easiest for you. And we're definitely watching and listening to feedback that we get. So. Okay, great. Did you have anything else you wanted to cover on this section, Carlicia?
No, that's it.
Okay. I'll switch back to the main tab. So, so the third bucket of items that we're looking at for 1.1 is making some improvements to the testing that we have for Velero. And so we've, over the last few releases, we as the core development team have definitely noticed that that the state of the testing for Velero is a bit of a hindrance to us. It slows us down somewhat, and there are several kind of different aspects to this. So one is the unit tests that we have, the Go tests that we have that are within the code base. And while we have I would say pretty decent coverage across the code base, sometimes these tests can be brittle, so that if we're doing refactoring or making changes to packages, that we end up having to do a lot of rewriting of tests to actually make them work for the revised behavior, and this just slows us down. And also we have situations where even though the tests seem to have good coverage in terms of code covered, they aren't necessarily surfacing bugs for us, and so they're less of a safety net than we would like. So that's kind of one aspect of it. And then additionally, there are some parts of the code base, some functionality that are just difficult to test in kind of Go level unit tests. So some examples here would be things like the pre and post backup hooks, where we're actually executing commands in running pods in the cluster. And this is something that's pretty hard to test without actually having a running cluster and having pods running where you can run these commands. Another example of this would be the cloud provider integration. So the actual plugin implementations that we have, these are, you can do some level of testing on these using mocks or fakes, but until you've really made API calls to the cloud providers and done kind of full end-to-end testing there, it's hard to have confidence. And so it's another area where we would like to have some additional test functionality. But so for 1.1, we've decided that we're going to start by doing some revisions to the unit tests that we have, and we primarily want to focus on the two core packages within the project, which are the backup and the restore package, just because these are the most important kind of code paths within the code base. And we're going to try and do some revisions to these unit tests so that they're focused a little bit less on testing implementation details and a little bit more on testing kind of at the public interface level, and focused on testing the overall behavior of the package. So the tests will become a little bit more coarse-grained, but we think that they'll probably provide us tests that are more stable, meaning that they'll have to change less often as we change implementation details of these packages. And they'll also give us some more confidence that, kind of integrated functionality of these packages is working as expected. So rather than testing individual helper methods or individual pieces of the functionality, we'll have more sort of integrated test coverage for these packages. And so the first PR for this work is up. I have a link here, so for anyone who's interested in looking and kind of getting more concrete in terms of what the changes look like, feel free to open this up and take a look at it. I'm not going to dig into it in this call, but the details are there, and definitely open to feedback and comments if anyone has it. The plan is to continue this work, so to continue to work across all of the tests that are in the backup package and then the restore package. And just try and get them to a state where we feel pretty comfortable with maintaining them and relying on them going forward. And then from there, we're also planning to look at integrating or implementing some kind of integration testing framework where we've discussed using Kind, so Kubernetes and Docker, as kind of a lightweight platform for getting a cluster up and running that we could deploy Velero into and actually drive some end-to-end test cases there. That would give us the opportunity to test, backup hooks, plugins, restic, and some other things that are more difficult to test in Go level unit tests. And so we hope that we can, between the revisions to the unit tests and the Kind integration tests, that we can cover a pretty broad set of functionality that we want to test. But there may still be, some things where we need to actually deploy to cloud providers to test. And so this is, the things around specific integrations with AWS or Azure or GCP or other platforms. So I think we'll probably tackle that set of things last, and hope that we can get as much as possible into the unit tests and the Kind-based integration tests first. So this will again be a big chunk of work for 1.1, and I think it's pretty possible that this will continue during 1.2. I'm not sure that we'll get through all of the testing work that we want to in 1.1, but we do want to tackle it early. Relatively early, meaning now in 1.1 and in the next release, because this is the kind of work that will pay dividends to us over time. Hopefully will help increase our velocity and improve our quality as we're making changes to the code base. So I'll pause there and see if anyone has any comments or questions on anything that we've covered so far. Okay, sounds like not. So yeah, we don't really have anything in our what's coming up section. I mean, we're really just kind of starting to dive into the scope of 1.1, and so over the next month to two, we'll basically be working on burning down the issues that are in our backlog. You can always check on the status of things through our GitHub repo, and we use ZenHub as kind of our planning board. We'll throw a link up here so that folks can get access to the ZenHub board, but we do have links to it in the repository already. But that's kind of an easy way to get a snapshot of what the status is of all the various issues that we're working on. So I think, over the next several community meetings, we'll continue to provide updates on where we are with each of these items, and provide updates on any new things that have come in that we've decided to tackle. All right, and with that, I think we'd like to kind of reiterate how folks can get involved for anyone who's interested in participating with the project. Tom, would it be all right if I called on you to cover this section quickly?
Yeah, absolutely. So our GitHub is there at Heptio Velero. Go ahead and take a look. Add issues there. We do have the issue 1327 to tell us about how you're using Velero. Would love to know more about specifically your use case and what you're getting out of Velero. our Slack channel is Velero on the Kubernetes Slack. Lots of activity there. You can use that to discuss problems you're having or things that you'd like to see, or just general questions. We're manning it on a regular basis. There's always somebody there. And just let us know what you're looking for in Velero, and we would like to make sure that that's included in releases to come. Again, just file issues on the GitHub is the best way to do it, and we would love to engage further with you. So with that, I guess we can open it up for any community questions that that might be out there. If there's no additional questions, then I guess, Steve, I guess we could probably adjourn.
Yeah, sounds good. So for everyone who's on the call, thanks a lot for joining. For those of you who are catching it later on YouTube, thanks for tuning in. We'll be back in 2 weeks. So these meetings will continue on the first and third Tuesdays of every month. So we look forward to seeing everyone again in 2 weeks with another update.
Great. Thank you, guys.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
Take care.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.